Diablo 2 Resurrected just recently had their first technical alpha, which came out of nowhere, literally getting announced halfway through the week prior to this recording and started a few days later. While mostly good, my reaction to the game's current state was a mixed bag. This is Tales for Game Lord Dash, breaking down 10 things you need to know before buying Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Not even death can save you from me.
Graphics. First, we have to talk about the graphics again. I was marveling at how well designed everything was before I got into the alpha, but nothing prepared me for what Vicarious Visions has accomplished thus far. Everything was dialed to 11. The lighting actually made the world feel darker, which is seriously odd to say, but all of the warm lighting that has been implemented gives this foreboding sense of dread, which is so fitting to this world by creating deeper shadows and becoming the only source of light in deep caverns, which gives enemies the ability to hide in the shadows until you trip over them. It's great. Oh, and the fire. The fire. I fixated so heavily on fire effects in-game every time I came up on some, whether it was the burning pentagrams in the dungeons, or the burning rogues, fire traps, or the fire surrounding Andariel's throne. I continuously toggled between Legacy and Resurrected just to see the differences between their old particle effects and their brand new set of effects that makes the fire look so realistic. I cannot wait to see what they do in Act 4 when you're down in the River of Flame and you're headed on your way to Hellforge and Chaos Sanctuary. Ugh. There's so much high quality polish on this game already that I am actually skeptical if they're going to push it any further at release. And if they do, oh boy. Area changes. Since joining this channel, I've become hyper obsessed with continuity in the lore, and now so much raises flags so easily. One thing I was dreading with the attention of higher resolution graphics was losing a lot of what made the original game so great in terms of visual storytelling. I was absolutely surprised by the fact that they utilized their 30% wiggle room to add some visual storytelling aspects into the game. In the Den of Evil, they added tents near corpse fire, which raised a lot of questions about his identity prior to him becoming a zombie and the game's first super unique. In the Rogue Monastery, they added additional bloodstains, broken furniture, and supplies. It looks like demons actually ransacked the monastery and took it from the rogues, and then of course just didn't bother to clean up. But the biggest call out, and it's a small but very important change, is in the ruins of Tristram. It never made sense to me why there was this solid wall at the back of Tristram with grown-up trees behind it, where a path to the cathedral should have been. Well, guess what? Vicarious Visions went and fixed that, which is such a smart design move, and so far my favorite visual change in terms of storytelling potential. Modified character models. I don't know if anyone else who was playing the alpha or watching streams or videos or looking up screenshots, but there looked to be a response from Vicarious Visions on the character models since we were first introduced to them in February. The Amazon, who was the subject of fan backlash, and a lot of it, appeared to have gone through a bit more smoothing out of her character model and didn't appear quite as aged up as a lot of the community has meticulously brought up time and again. This is a great sign that the devs really are listening and paying attention to feedback from the community, and there's nothing more gratifying than knowing that game developers care about what their audience says. Look at it. Look at it. Oh, it's gorgeous. Additional functions. I absolutely loved using the legacy and zoom functions while playing the game. The legacy toggle was a great way to compare the visual differences between classic and resurrected on the fly, as I mentioned with fire effects. Plus, it allows for that little spurt of classic nostalgia from point to point. And while the zoom function was considered largely gimmicky and giving the ability to zoom in on your character and see your gear in better detail, or maybe just get a closer look at an enemy or some details in the environment, it actually provides potential gameplay applications. I actually went into the maggot lair and played the entire area zoomed in. It added this larger sense of claustrophobia, and if you play it without the minimap active, which, by the way, the changes to the minimap are just great, then it added mystery and made it more difficult to navigate the dungeon. So now there's this complete change in feeling of the game, and can absolutely be applied in other areas for a similar effect, changing how a lot of veteran players and new players alike can experience Diablo 2. Bugs. Now, in the essence of all fairness, I need to examine some of the negative aspects of the current state of the game. Of course, the whole purpose of the technical alpha is to go in depth and trip over bugs and issues so they can be reported and fixed. We wanted to find these things, and many were located, according to lead producer Rod Ferguson. A couple that I found myself included issues with the terrain, which is understandable when you transition from 2D to 3D, so it was a good thing to catch. I actually got caught in one of the recessed crypts in the mausoleum in the burial ground. I was able to escape by use of a town portal, but little things like that are still inconvenient, although they're pretty funny. The other thing was clipping in the terrain in certain areas, which is simply textures not meshing together properly and showing both at once simultaneously. This is another thing that's something to look at in final polishings of the game, and I'm confident the team will take this into consideration. Aside from that, and the dialogue sound cutting out from time to time.
As you know, some time ago Diablo was slain beneath Tristram. And when our hero emerged triumphant from the labyrinth beneath town...
And the sound cut out. No additional content. As of right now, Vicarious Visions doesn't have any plans to add anything to the game beyond the original release and Lord of Destruction, updated to the latest patch. This is either a really good move, given how a lot of players feel about keeping the integrity of the original, or a really bad thing, given how much access the developers have to deleted content and concept work. It would be cool to expand on the story a bit before the events of Diablo Immortal, or even during the events of Diablo 2 following along such storylines as Legacy of Blood. But time will tell what the devs ultimately decide on. Quality of life, accessibility. One of the biggest reasons to buy Diablo 2 Resurrected are the accessibility features being added to the game, which aren't currently present in Classic. If you have impaired vision, or are colorblind, or even hard of hearing, Vicarious Visions has your back. One of the first things I went to look at when I jumped into the alpha was how these functions were being implemented, and was not at all disappointed. Granted, the colorblind mode wasn't presently available for the alpha, but the other options were active and were really cool to play with. While I do prefer smaller text to open up more view space for the game, I did enjoy how toggling low vision mode made everything a little easier to read, and the addition of subtitles is a nice touch, as not everything in game is spoken in text boxes. These are awesome touches to the game and are definitely noteworthy. Item changes. Now, there are some very minor alterations to items, beyond the unique item appearance changes on the characters, which I may or may not have fixated on a bit too much during my livestream on Twitch. Twitch.tv/TalesTheBlade. And I mean, this was extremely minor, but little things like Wart's Leg having 3 slots, which I really never ran into in D2 Classic. Let me know in the comments if that was a thing. But if they're willing to change things like that, there's no telling what else may have been altered in-game. Though, as long as it isn't game-breaking, then there's really no need to mark this as a negative thing. I personally just can't wait to dive deeper in, truly. Monotony. I've always said, Diablo is the most fun you can have in 20 minutes in gaming, and this has always been true for over 20 years. However, even with all of the upgrades and changes given to this game, it doesn't take away from the fact that at some point, most players will likely sit back and really just kind of lose themselves in the game and even become a bit numb to all of the upgrades of Resurrected. So if said players already have a copy of Diablo 2 Classic, then why would they buy a whole other game just to play it as they would a game they already own? I will say this in warning. Keep your eyes on the small things. All of the smallest changes, as I thought they would, blew my mind and made the experience completely separate from Diablo 2 Classic, in a glorious, upgraded experience. But after playing for hours and hours, it was readily apparent that I could easily slip away and forget that I was playing that upgraded version. Experiences may vary. On a general level, despite all qualms about Resurrected thus far, I was floored by how much work has gone into the current state of the game and got me highly excited for the future. I will say this, if Diablo 4 is even half the game that Resurrected has panned out to be, it's going to be fantastic. But those are some major footprints to follow in. So let's hope Luis and the team are up for the task. As a final word, make sure everyone heads over to the Diablo 2 Resurrected main page and opt in for the beta test, which you can do right now. And of course, I hope to see you there in Diablo 2 Resurrected.